You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Arya Whitmer, and this is your Mae Young Classic audio update for episode number 3. It is September 19th, 2018. Thank you all for listening. So, as most of you probably remember, I used to review this little show called NXT. And if you rewind about 8 years, the very first match on the very first show that I reviewed was a match between two ladies by the name of Caitlin and Maxine. And the match was such a terrible 3 minutes that it quote-unquote won the Wrestling Observer Worst Worked Match of the Year award that year. Caitlin improved quite a bit over the next 3 or so years. She was a member of NXT. She actually won NXT Season 3. She was a former Divas champion. And now, about 4 years after leaving WWE, she's back to compete in the first round of the Mae Young Classic. And she went one-on-one with Kavita Devi, who was trained by the great Khali of all people. She's been in developmental for over a year, and ironically, Caitlin, while she was in WWE for 4 years, is a former Divas champion, never competed at WrestleMania, while Kavita Devi was in this past year's first ever women's WrestleMania Battle Royal. The match was mostly fine. It was a little rough in the middle, but they held things together, and Caitlin won with her spear after a cannonball in the corner. She seemed ready to cry when they raised her hand in victory, and she will now go 1-1 to face the winner of tonight's main event between Allysin Kay and Mia Yim. Then we had Ginny out next to go 1-1 with one of the favorites in this year's tournament, Toni Storm. Storm was in last year's Mae Young Classic, made it all the way to the semifinals before going down in defeat to Kairi Sane. Ginny is a fashionista and wants to use the Mae Young Classic to catapult her career from modeling to WWE. And I gotta tell you, even if you think that's a lame thing, it's a lot better than if this was 1995, where she would have been the female Jeff Jarrett and instead using WWE to springboard her career as a model. Tyler Breeze was shown ringside watching on. No one referenced the fact that Tyler Breeze is a model, Ginny is a model. Of course he'd be there to watch her match. And also the Iconics were there. Ginny did that annoying thing in the first minute of the match where she's put in an arm bar and begins tapping the arm of Toni Storm in what would technically be a tap out, but because that's not actually the finish of the match, it doesn't count. But just one of my little pet peeves that don't tap your opponent's body part or don't tap the ground or whatever if it's not actually supposed to be a tap out. Storm booted Ginny's head off her neck, so Ginny found her head, screwed it back on, and gave Storm an STO into the middle turnbuckle. Ginny used an arm bar with a crossface attached, which did look unique at the very least. Ginny then used an arm drag near the corner. I'm not sure if Storm was supposed to be arm dragged into the turnbuckles, but she didn't. She missed the turnbuckles. Well, she didn't get far enough to hit the turnbuckles and instead bumped onto the mat like normal. Ginny slapped on a rolling surfboard, but eventually had to let go, and then she ran face first into Storm's foot, which was just a bad idea. As that began Tony's comeback, Toni hit the snap German suplex, running hip attack, and the Storm Zero Tiger Driver for the pin. So Toni Storm moves on now to face the winner of next week's match between Rachel Evers and Hiroyo Matsumoto. We had Karen Q versus Xia Li. Li is the first Chinese female signed to WWE and was in last year's Mae Young Classic, where she lost to Mercedes Martinez in what it turns out was her first ever match. You know, I'm sure they have, but I mean, how many men have they put their first ever match on TV for. But they seem to, even nowadays, do it at least semi-regularly with the women, which, like, it's really not fair to put anybody in their first ever match on national television. You know, I'm going to bet for as good as Kurt Angle's famous first match was, I bet if you put that on TV, it'd probably still be groaning. By the way, Karen is a former gymnast. Karen Q is a former gymnast. She has a master's degree in nursing, and she wrestled in Shimmer. And Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae are at ringside to watch this one on. They started the match with a show of respect and a karate demonstration. Karen got the worst of it, so she slapped Zaya, much to the chagrin of the fans. Karen periodically did a mocking bow towards Zaya. Lee made her comeback with a series of kicks to the thigh. She went for a high kick, but Karen was quick and ducked it. Turns out she wasn't quick enough because she raised her head back up just in time for Lee to come up with the other foot to knock Karen out. Finally, the finish saw Karen missed a frog splash and then got pinned after a twisting axe kick. And Zaya Lee moves on to the next round to face Deonna Purrazzo. And then we had the main event. Probably the best match of the first round so far. And I mean, in some cases, not saying a whole lot, but, you know, this one was pretty good. It was Mia Yim versus Allysin Kay. By the way, if the rumors are true, congratulations to Mia Yim on being signed to WWE. Both Kay and Yim have wrestled all over the world. They've wrestled each other all over the world at different points. Both were former women's champions at Impact, and actually back at Slammiversary 2016, when they were known as Sienna and Jade, Allysin Kay defeated Mia Yim for the Impact Women's title. They concentrated also in the pre-match video on a match where Mia broke Allison's nose. Sonya Deville and Shelton Benjamin were shown at ringside for this match. Mia got the best of the early exchanges, including running down the apron and kicking Allison squarely in the chest. Back in the ring, Kay laid Yim out with a pounce period that sent her halfway across the ring and then out of it. Mia rebounded from that and hit a suicide dive. However, her advantage at that point ended right there as she backed Kay to the post, went for a chop, but Kay ducked and Yim chopped the ring post. That one echoed across Full Sail. In fact, I'm sure there are people in classes on the other side of the campus who are going, what on earth was that? An exchange of submission holds led to Yim blocking a high kick, and the two enemies going forehead to forehead. And before resuming their battle, Kay backdropped out of a package piledriver attempt, but got caught with a code red for a near fall. Mia went to the middle rope, and after a brief exchange, hit Soul Food, which is Gail Kim's Eat Defeat, for the win. Like I said, probably the best match of the first round, and now Mia will take on Caitlyn in the second round, which should be an interesting little bout. So that's going to do it for this week. Thank you all for listening. Next week, it is the end of the first round. It is the end of the round of 32. And until then, thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you again in 7 days.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.